Hello, and welcome to Friday's class. Tonight's class is going to be about the prophet Elisha. Elisha. E-L-I-S-H-A. It sounds a lot like last week's, which was Elijah. E-L-I-J-A-H. But this week it's about Elisha, and it comes from the second book of Kings, chapters 4 through 9. If you remember from last week, Elijah and Elisha were together at the very end. And Elijah was taken up in a whirlwind in a chariot of fire up to heaven. And right before he left, Elijah asked Elisha, "What would you like from me before I leave?" And Elisha asked for a double portion of God's Holy Spirit, and to have the same power that Elijah was given from God. And so as Elijah was taken up to heaven in the chariot, Elisha was able to see him. And because he saw him, then he was given what he asked for. So Elisha has the same power that Elijah had. So we're going to talk about several stories, very small stories, about what Elisha did during his life. And you will see that God's spirit and power was very strong with Elisha. So let's get started. Our first story is about a woman and her two sons. If you remember, during Elijah's time, there were 3 years where there's no rain. And during that time, the king and the queen and the priest of Baal all got rid of all of God's prophets that were in the land of Israel. And so all of those men were killed or they were sent away. And so there were women who were their wives that are now widows. So this story that we're going to talk about first happens with one of the widows of those prophets that was killed. This man was killed during those 3 years by the priests of Baal and the king and queen of the time when Elijah was the prophet. So we have a quick picture. This woman is the widow, and she has 2 sons. And you see her here with lots of pots. What's happening is that this woman, she didn't have a lot of money because her husband died. And there was a man that was trying to take her 2 sons to become slaves if she couldn't pay off her debt. So she was scared of now losing her 2 sons because she didn't have any money. So she went to the prophet Elisha and she asked him, "What can I do?" So Elisha said, "What do you have in your house?" And she said, "Well, I have 1 container of oil." He said, "Okay, now send your sons and you go around and ask your neighbors for more containers." So they were given all of these pots. So all the pots come from their neighbors and they're all empty. And he said, once you have your pot, then you're going to take your pot, your container of oil, and you're going to take these other containers and you're going to pour the oil that you have in to all of these pots until they're full. Then set it aside. Get a new one and dump more oil and set it aside until it's full. And he said, gather as many pots as you can. So she, the woman, and her 2 sons went to all the neighbors and collected a lot of containers, lots of vases and pots and things that could hold oil. And she collected all of these pots that you see, and then she started to pour. And she used her one container, and she started to pour. And she filled up the container, moved it aside. Filled up the container, moved it aside. And she kept asking, okay, bring me one more. And so they would bring her another container, and she'd pour and set it aside. And bring another one. And finally, her son said, there are no more. We have filled up all of the containers. And she stood and she was amazed because she only had one container of oil, but she was able to fill all of these containers. And she was very thankful. And she went to Elisha and said, what do I do with all this oil? And he said, God has blessed you with enough oil. Go and sell the oil and pay off your debt. So now she has a way to make money to pay off her debt, and then she will not lose her two sons. So that was a great blessing that Elisha gave her in multiplying the amount of oil that she had. So that's our first story. Now we're going to talk about there were some men, and they were beside a river, and they needed to cut down some trees. And they were cutting, and they said, we were cutting all these trees down, and all of a sudden, one of them, his axe, the thing that you have that has the big, thing that you cut with, the axe head, the part at the top that cuts, it came off and it fell into this big river. And he was very upset because now he can't cut the trees down, but also because he had borrowed the axe. It was his friend's axe. And so he came to Elisha and said, can you help me? Because I have lost this axe. It was my friend's, and now the axe head is in the river. And so he was very upset. And so he asked Elisha what to do. And Elisha asked him, where in the river did it fall? And the man pointed right here. And so Elisha took a stick from a tree and he threw it in the river right where the man pointed. And then whoop, the axe head, which is very heavy, heavier than water, so it should sink, but the axe head came up to the top of the surface right then, and the man was able to pull it out of the water. So that was a great blessing that Elisha was able to perform for this man using God's power that he gave him. All right, and we're going to talk about one more. Our next story is about a man, and he is the captain of an army. But he's not the captain of the army of Israel. He's the captain of an army of some of their enemies. So if you can kind of see on our map here, we have up here on this side is Israel, and down here is Judah. And over here, this area is called Syria. So between Israel and Judah, those two are all the 12 tribes together. Then between them, there's this river. And then their enemies start on this side. So up here is a country called Syria. And this man was the captain of the Syrian army. And his name is Naaman. And Naaman he was a leper. So he was a very, very strong and valiant soldier, but he was also a leper, which person with leprosy has all of these boils in their skin is just, it's got all these growths on it, and it's disgusting. And nobody likes to be around a person who is a leper. So this captain, he is also a leper. Well, in one of the battles that he had with Israel, Naaman was able to capture this maid, this woman from Israel, and he made her a maid for a helper for his wife. So over in the country of Syria, he has this maid from Israel. And the maid sees that Naaman is a leper. And she told the wife, well, it would be good if he came to Israel, because we have prophets that have power from God that could heal him of his leprosy. So the disease he has is called leprosy. And so the wife told the husband, and the husband decided to write a letter to the king of Israel and ask about these prophets, someone that could help heal him of his leprosy. And Elisha, he heard about this man Naaman, and he decided he could help. So he sent a message to Naaman asking him to come. And when he came to Israel, then he sent a message through one of his servants to go tell Naaman what to do to be healed of this leprosy. And what he told him to do was this: go to the river Jordan, which, if you remember, was that river down the middle. Okay? So go to the river Jordan, which is very special for the people of Israel, and go in there into the water and bathe your body 7 times. If you wash yourself 7 times in the river Jordan, you will be healed of your leprosy. So Naaman became very angry. That was not what he expected. What he wanted was to come to Israel and to ask Elisha to come out to him, and Elisha just calls on God and he's healed. But that's not what Elisha did. He just sent him a message, go wash in the river 7 times and you'll be healed. So Elisha never saw the man. He never saw Naaman. He just sent him a message with what to do. So Naaman was angry and said, I'm not going to do this. First, what will that do? Just washing in a river? And why the river Jordan? In Syria, he thinks they have better rivers, so he could just go bathe in those rivers instead. So he's thinking, I'm not going to do this. But Naaman, his servants, they came up to him and they said, I think you should listen to him. He is a man of God. So you should do exactly what he says. So Naaman's like, okay, I will go to the river Jordan and I will bathe 7 times. And so there you go. Naaman went, and he went to the river, and you can see him. He got in the river and he bathed 7 times. And his leprosy was taken from him. He no longer had all of the boils and all the gross skin. He was very clean. And so he was so excited because he realized how powerful the God of Israel was, because he didn't even have to see the prophet, but he did exactly what he said, and God blessed him. So it was amazing, that blessing. Well, today I told you just a few stories about the things that Elisha did during his life. So, Elisha was a very special prophet because he had that extra portion of God's Spirit, and he was able to perform many miracles for God. So, I hope that you enjoyed our story, and next week we will continue on with the next story, which will be the prophet Jonah. So, thank you for listening, and I will end our class with a song. So, have a good week. Thank you very much. Bye.
O Lord, prepare me to be a sanctuary, pure and holy, tried and true. With thanksgiving, I'll be a living sanctuary for you. It is you, Lord, who came to save the heart and soul of every man. It is you, Lord, who knows my weakness, who gives me strength with thine own hand. Lead me on, Lord, from temptation, pure